Wisdom is thinking and behaving in ways which make you and others happier in the long term. You become wiser in order to be happier. Being wiser makes you happier because you choose behaviors which lead to positive long-term situations and avoid foolish behaviors which lead to negative ones. Wisdom begins with thought or insight and is then manifested in behavior, which includes what you don't do, avoidance behaviors, as well as what you do, action behaviors. Wisdom is not idle armchair philosophy and theorizing alone, although theory is an important first step. Wisdom is context dependent and lies in how you respond to a specific situation. Wisdom is rare because it is easier to favour short-term gratification over long-term happiness. Wisdom is an infinite learning process with its foundation upon a basis of not knowing. The process of becoming wiser combines three things. Lacking any one of these components will inhibit your progress: study, contemplation, behaviour. The following exercises are sentence stems. I got the idea for creating stems from Nathaniel Branden's The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. They are good for tapping into the wisdom already inherent within you. The first stems are situation stems. So here I want you to write down a situation or goal or decision or event in your life. For example, I feel unhealthy and want to have a healthier diet. That could be your situation or your goal. So then, regarding this situation, having written that situation down, regarding this situation, complete at least six endings to the following sentence stems. Write rapidly and write whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to sound wise, so don't censor yourself. It just needs to come straight out of your mind and onto the page or the Word document or whatever you're writing on. So here they are. If I behaved wisely in this situation, I would blank. If I behaved foolishly in this situation, I would blank. Repeat this process with another situation or goal or decision or event in your life as many times as is helpful. Okay, so the next series of stems are more general stems about wisdom in general. So try to complete at least 6 endings to the following sentence stems. Here they are. Wisdom to me means blank. Times I have behaved wisely in the past are when I blank. Times I have behaved foolishly in the past are when I blank. If I were in the same situation again, I would blank. If I focus on my long-term happiness, blank. When I contemplate the wisdom already within myself, blank. When I study multiple perspectives with skepticism and open-mindedness, blank. When I behave wisely, blank. When I behave foolishly, blank. End of stems. So complete these stems as many times as you feel you need to. If I were you, I would complete the situation stems on a regular basis, because there are obviously new situations in your life coming up all the time. And the general stems are just to give you a general idea about your response to the concept of wisdom. So you might only need to do the general stems once, or maybe you can do it again and again. The more you do the stems, the more you will get out of them. That's how stems work. Welcome to the in-depth discussion part of the video. Now, if you really feel like you don't have much time to watch the rest of the video, that's fine, but please make sure that you complete the exercises, and they should stand you in good stead for becoming wiser. If you do feel like you have time to watch the rest of the video, then please feel free to watch this in-depth discussion. It will give you a stronger theoretical foundation for the concept of wisdom, and definitely also make sure to complete the exercises in the second part of the video as well. So why be wise? Why are we pursuing this goal of becoming a wiser person? The meaning of philosophy is love of wisdom. And the goal of this subject is eudaimonia, which means happiness. It follows then that happiness is the goal and wisdom is the way to achieve that goal. The more foolish you are, the unhappier you are, whilst the wiser you are, the happier you are. Since wise behaviours lead to happy consequences and foolish behaviours unhappy ones. What is wisdom? Well, wisdom is the ability to choose actions, more specifically behaviours, which include actions and avoidance, which will make me and others happier in the long term. Behaviour includes what you don't do, so avoidance, as much as what you do, action. The ability to apply knowledge in order to do something successfully is also an example of wisdom. The ability, strength and courage to choose long-term happiness over instant gratification is another example of wisdom. Wisdom is accepting and learning from foolish mistakes and not being foolish again. Or, if you can, not being foolish in the first place. Just remembering, of course, that there's nothing wrong with being foolish. It's just that, does this behaviour help me get to where I want to go? Is the real question you have to ask. So wisdom is expressed through the decisions you make in certain situations, which fully appreciate the context of that situation. A wise choice in one situation, time or place, might be a foolish choice in another. Wisdom is balance. It is knowing what is too much and what is too little given the specific needs of the situation. Balance is not always about going for the middle ground, it's about getting the right amount of each depending on the specific situation. This is why it's difficult to be wise in life, because life presents so many different complicated situations to work through. Wisdom is not idle theorizing and armchair philosophy. Wisdom is a practice as well as a concept. You can't only think your way into being wise, which is why armchair philosophers and academics who only theorize aren't real philosophers. I know that's a bold statement, but it's true. You're only a true philosopher if you combine theory with practice and behavior. So wisdom is not being an old man with a beard or an old woman in a rocking chair. Although the longer you live, the more life experience you are exposed to, and therefore the more opportunity you have to be wise, hence the stereotype of the wise old person. But this is no more than a stereotype, since you can be wise at any age. In fact, choosing consciously to be wiser at the youngest possible age and become wise beyond your years is the wisest decision you could make. So being a perfectionist and beating yourself up for being foolish is not wisdom either. So the wise person is actually grateful to the foolish one for showing them how to be wise. Life is about getting your hands dirty and making mistakes. I think, as Paulo Coelho said, a mistake repeated more than once is a decision. To avoid being foolish again, simply learn from your mistakes and make a wiser choice next time. This doesn't mean, though, that you have to make mistakes yourself in order to become wiser. An even wiser choice is to learn from the mistakes other people have made. What is human history but a compelling record of all the mistakes humanity has made in the past, and how we've slowly, through trial and error and constant backsliding, been learning from them? And also, an alternative to learning from your own past mistakes is anticipation, and doing a pre-mortem, you might say, regarding a goal you are pursuing. So it's also in the planning as much as it is in the post-mortem, the reflection on what your past has been like. It's also planning wisely for the future as well. So wisdom is not limited. Wisdom and the possibilities for growing into a wiser person are infinite. There is no such thing as a perfectly wise person who couldn't be wiser. The purpose of wisdom is to gradually become happier through a series of increasingly wiser behaviours. You will feel happier for each wise decision you make, not for trying to be perfectly wise, though. So it's all in the little victories, the little wise behaviours that you do over time, which will make you a wiser and a happier person. How can I be wise? The first thing you can do is contemplate. This is the first component, I would say, of becoming wiser, is contemplation. Since the deepest wisdom lies within, the wisest philosophers contemplate for themselves, in solitude, questions such as, what is wisdom? How can I or how have I been foolish in the past, and how can I avoid repeating those mistakes? And how can I be wiser? So it's not just a simple case of listening to me or watching my video or reading someone else's writing, reading a book somewhere and then saying, oh, that's what wisdom is, I'm just going to believe what they tell me. It's actually about contemplating it for yourself. There's a value in thinking these things through for yourself. You can also be wise by behaving in wise ways. I might call this the second component of wisdom. So behaving in wise ways. Wisdom begins with thought, but is then manifested through behavior. Now remember, the reason I use the word behavior and not the word action is because behavior includes both action and inaction and avoidance, or avoidance you might say. So action is doing something, but avoidance is actually not doing something. And behavior is about what you do and what you don't do. So now we can look at examples of foolish behaviors and later examples of wise behaviors. But let's go through the list of examples of foolish behaviors. I've created this list. This will hopefully give you an idea of what I mean when I say the word foolish. And of course, remember, this is about the behaviors. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are a foolish person or you should beat yourself up for being a foolish person. in a sense, we are all foolish people as well as wise people, because we do both foolish and wise things in our lives. This is just really giving you an idea of the behaviors. So examples of foolish behaviors. Here we go. Trying to be perfect at everything. So I know that I've suffered from this one a lot. It's basically this idea that you need to do everything absolutely spotlessly and perfectly, otherwise it's a complete waste of time. You can imagine how much stress and suffering this pursuing this kind of path would cause. The path of perfectionism is actually also a kind of sneaky form of procrastination in a way, because it basically gives you an excuse to not try anything in the first place, which is quite a foolish decision, a foolish behavior to engage in. So try not to do that. Anyway, let's keep going along the list. The second thing, specializing in only one thing but forgetting about everything else. So this can be quite foolish as well. Another one about relationships. Choosing to stay in a relationship because you're lonely, or seek love from somebody else because you don't love yourself. Or, on the flip side, choosing to jump from one relationship to another because you lack the patience to endure the emotional labour of committing to a person you love. So, as we said, it's about finding the right balance here. It's not just about there's never really a clear answer as to what's wise or what's foolish. However, often foolish behaviors tend to follow imbalanced methods, and they tend to follow extremes. Like, it's black and white, either do this or that. So lying to or keeping secrets from others because you're worried they'd be offended or hurt if you told them the truth. Being honest with everyone as a blanket policy with zero discretion, even if it could get you and others in trouble at work or in other situations. Not saving money for retirement and other important financial goals. Saving as much money as possible and not investing or spending it, so that over time its value decreases with inflation anyway. Eating junk food because it's easier, cheaper, and more instantly gratifying, even though it could give you cancer in the long term. Delegating your most important life decisions to others. Making decisions on impulse. Agonizing over decisions and regretting past decisions. Working only for money and not because it provides any sense of fulfillment or life purpose. Not strategizing or planning how to achieve goals properly. Not having or creating any goals and living an aimless life. Expecting the law of attraction alone to manifest your goals without taking any action towards them. Not getting enough sleep. Oversleeping. Suppressing and avoiding your emotions. Indulging and wallowing in your emotions. So that's just a list of foolish behaviors. Now I'm going to give you a list of examples of wise behaviors. Here we go. Acknowledging, accepting, and learning from your past mistakes. Strategizing well and trying the best strategy you can think of, whilst being open to making and learning from mistakes. Mastering a skill you are most passionate about, whilst giving enough attention to other needs and areas of life. Leaving a toxic relationship, facing the loneliness, and learning to love yourself before entering another relationship. Staying in a relationship with a person you truly love and committing to them, even when it is emotionally difficult. Being honest with someone who deserves to know the truth and letting go of worrying about whether it would hurt or offend them. Being discreet and avoiding disclosing information, especially when it could seriously harm yourself or others. So this is a funny one, because actually a lot of people might think, well, it's foolish to ever keep a secret or lie. But actually, there are certain contexts, now remember it's context dependent wisdom is context dependent. So there are certain contexts where it might be wiser to actually be discreet and avoid disclosing information than actually sharing it. Let me give you an example. For example, imagine you are in World War II in France under the Nazi occupation. Here, a wise person would not have told a Nazi where the Jews were hiding. They wouldn't have told them. This comes to mind recently because there was this news article I read on. They actually found the person who did disclose where Anne Frank's family were hiding. They identified who it was. I think he was doing it to try and save his own family, actually. So he was kind of put into an impossible position by the officers there. But if I guess if you're not put in an impossible position, honesty in that situation is not necessarily good to use as a blanket policy. In that case, in a situation of danger like that, it's actually better to keep information to yourself, because if you disclose that information, it could harm people. So this is what I mean by wisdom being context dependent here. Okay, so another example is saving for retirement and other important financial goals. Investing and spending your money wisely on things that are truly important so that the money does not become stagnant and is well spent. Eating healthy food and using food as your medicine now so that you don't need to pay the steep health costs further down the line. Taking responsibility for your most important life decisions and doing what your deepest intuition, heart or gut is guiding you to do. Making decisions after careful, deliberate contemplation and reflection. Spending a specific amount of time making a decision, then going with your intuition and committing to it without looking back and learning from it if it was a mistake. Working for fulfillment as well as money in a career related to your life purpose. Strategizing and planning how to properly achieve your goals, then taking actionable steps to make them a success. Creating inspiring goals and living a purposeful life. Using the law of attraction and visualization in tandem with taking action steps towards manifesting your goals. Getting enough sleep and cultivating the discipline to avoid oversleeping and sticking with your daily habits and routine. Noticing, accepting and processing your emotions, including the messages they are trying to send. Avoiding wallowing in emotions, especially negative ones, by taking healthy actions in spite of them. So that's just a list of examples. Of course, you can go on and create more examples. In fact, the exercise I gave you at the beginning of the video should encourage you to generate your own examples through the stems. So, wisdom is a learning process. As I've said before, it includes these three components, which you can do really in any order. Contemplate, study, practice. So, well, I mean, practice or behavior. Same. I put them in the same category. So, wisdom arises from learning, which is a combination of contemplation, study, and practice or behavior. Contemplate to think for yourself, study through reading, courses, and other sources in order to assimilate and integrate multiple perspectives, and practice behaviors in order to experiment and discover the wisest approach to a goal. Then contemplate again, and the more you repeat this process, the more you learn and grow in wisdom, because you critically examine and assimilate theory from multiple perspectives, contemplate it for yourself, and implement ideas through behavior, which then reveals new, wiser insights you can work with. Wisdom is expressed through insights. An insight you might describe as a pithy sentence or a phrase. But these insights are no more than nice platitudes unless they are embodied and exercised in life through, you guessed it, behavior. Behavior in meaning action and avoidance. So examples of insights include: be the change you want to see in the world, by Gandhi. Next quote: the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. That was by Socrates. And the next quote: by thought, the thing you want is brought to you. By action, you receive it. That was by Wallace Wattles. So insights like these, whether you have them yourself or hear them from other people, should, if you agree with them, generate an emotion of awe or revelation, or an aha moment, which will then spur you into aligning your behavior with it. So here's an example of how we can embody and exercise an insight in life through our behavior. So let's take this quote by Gandhi, which is often quoted. You might even see it on t-shirts or in different places around the world on the internet. The quote is, or the insight is, be the change you want to see in the world. Okay, so I would take that quote and write it down. Then we can start asking questions about it. So what change do I want to see in the world? Okay, so I want to see people show greater respect for nature. Okay, so that's what I want, that's the change I want to see in the world. Okay, so through which behaviors can I show greater respect for nature? And specifically, through which behaviors can I show greater respect for nature? Because I'm trying to be the change that I want to see in the world. Okay, so how about the first one? Eat less meat, or even avoid eating meat. So I'll write that down. That's a behavior I could do, or avoid doing. This is an avoidance behavior, actually. I'm choosing not to eat meat. That's an avoidance behavior. The next one: use less plastic. That's actually another avoidance behavior. And then this one's an action behavior. So go for walks in nature and enjoy its beauty. So there we go. I've got 3 behaviors, 2 avoidance behaviors, 1 action behavior. That's going to help me to be the change I want to see in the world. And of course, I've got to try and be more specific about how to implement these behaviors in my life. So let's take the one, eat less meat or avoid eating meat. That's quite a vague one. So here's how I could do it. Note down each time I eat meat and review my notes in order to monitor my meat intake. Then create a long-term plan for reducing it. By the end of this process, by the end of this whole process of integrating behavior into the insights, you want something tangible that you can take action on. So it's not just a case of coming up with a vague idea like eat less meat. It's about saying, okay, exactly how am I going to implement this behavior in my life, and then taking action on it, or obviously avoiding doing something. But either way, you're specifically and tangibly implementing this behavior into your life. When you actually change your behavior in response to wisdom, then you become truly wise. So this is why, this hopefully gives you a better idea then of why wisdom is rare. Because people don't actually bother to follow through on the behaviors which could embody wise concepts and wise ideas and insights. Wisdom is rare as well because it is easier to favour short-term gratification over long-term happiness. Though the pizza would be instantly gratifying, I have a long-term vision for my health and am willing to sacrifice this short-term pleasure in order to be happier and healthier in the long term. Now, this doesn't mean that I don't eat pizza. I do, and I love it. But I try not to do it too much because I have this long-term goal of health that I'm working towards. And this doesn't mean I'm bad for eating the pizza, since this is not about morality, this is not about right or wrong, this is about happiness. But I have the wisdom to foresee that if I eat pizza too much, then it could inhibit my long-term health and therefore my long-term happiness. Do you see how all these wise behaviors, wise thoughts and behaviors lead to happiness? This is what we mean by the goal of becoming wiser is really the goal of becoming happier. So the last point I'll make on this is that wisdom is accepting that at first I know nothing and being open-minded to new possibilities. Wisdom begins with not knowing, because it is only through starting with a blank slate and an open mind that we can learn new things and become wiser. Otherwise, we're held back by dogma and beliefs and things which people say we should believe just because that's what they believe is morally right or wrong. We want to throw away what's morally right or wrong here. It's not about right or wrong, it's about happiness. So, in conclusion, to be wise, you must first empty your cup.